Let's talk about tithing and its biblical roots. In the Old Testament, tithing is primarily about land, holiness, and sustaining a just community. It's not a universal religious tax. It shows up first in the book of Genesis when Abraham gives Melchizedek a tenth of his wealth. Later on, Jacob vows to give a tenth if God brings him home in peace. In this context, the tithe is a vow, not an obligation, purely voluntary then, as a sign of allegiance with God. Later on, when the promised land was divided up between the tribes, the Levites received no territory. Instead, the other tribes were to bring a tithe of the produce of their land to support the priestly class. This was a land-based social system that provided for the Levites so that they might all worship the Lord together. Every third year, there was added what was called the poor tithe. Essentially, this created a safety net for widows and the poor. Add in the occasional festival, and the so-called tithe was really more than like 25%. In Malachi 3, the relationship between tithing and the blessings of God is made clear. Will a mere mortal rob God? Yet you rob me. But you ask, how are we robbing you? In tithes and offerings, you are under a curse, your whole nation, because you are robbing me. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it. So, if you want God to bless you, then you have to tithe. That would seem to be the implication here. But then switch over to the New Testament, and suddenly the tithe is no longer really a thing at all. Instead, giving becomes about generosity, equality, and participation. When Jesus mentions the tithe in his conversation with the Pharisees, it is solely to chide them for neglecting justice. His point being that tithing without justice is hollow. Paul's rules regarding giving boil down to give willingly, give proportionately, give generosity, and give to create equality. He never appealed to the tithe. Instead, he framed giving as our participation in God's grace. Once the temple system ended and the people of God were no longer tied to a land-based covenant structure, the tithe no longer fit the shape of the new community. Instead, the Spirit formed a people whose giving is responsive, relational, and mission-shaped. John Wesley had 3 rules for his societies when it came to money. First, he said, go ahead and gain all you can, as long as you can do so without harming your neighbor or your own soul. His followers were to avoid any work that damaged their health, exploited labor, fed vanity, or harmed the poor. Then he said, save all you can by not wasting money on status, fashion, or indulgence. Instead, he said, give all you can. And this was solidarity with the poor. The tithe, then, as a land-based system providing for the priesthood, was by then officially over. In his mind, we did not owe God 10%. We owe God everything, 100%, to be wisely used as stewards. At every Methodist class meeting, he would ask questions like, how have you cared for the poor this week? Have you avoided needless expense? Have you given where you saw need? As one scholar noted, early Methodists didn't give because they were wealthy. They gave because they were poor together. Wesley liked to say, render unto God not a tenth, not a third, but all that is God's, and everything we have is God's, and we are merely stewards. So give all you have to God. In hierarchical fashion, we must use whatever money we do have to provide for first our own basic needs, then provide for our family's basic needs, and then everything that remains beyond that is for the poor. So all of that is a prelude before we finally come to our twisted truth for this week. Something Jesus never said. Jesus never said, "Blessed are the tithers, for they shall be called the children of God." And yet for many churches, the tithe is still the standard and an expectation for faithful members. Given its origins, however, the tithe is no longer even valid. That was based upon the tribal allotment of land and intended to support the Levites. What Jesus said is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Our whole relationship with God now isn't based on percentages, but on attitude. The old system levied a tax upon us. The new system requires an attitude adjustment. No math is necessary, just wise stewardship and a great deal of compassion. I suppose that it is a universal dream of just about everyone to suddenly become wealthy. Maybe there is a buried treasure out there just waiting to be found by you. Or maybe against all odds, you might actually win the lottery someday. A California couple was out walking their dog on their rural property when they noticed a rusted can sticking out of the ground. Digging it up revealed gold coins from the mid-late 1800s, all in astonishing good condition. They kept digging and found 8 cans total, containing over 1,400 gold coins. Estimated value, $10 million. Their first reaction was fear. The couple chose to remain anonymous, afraid that people would be swarming over their property, trying to find more gold. They did donate a portion of their proceeds to local charities and causes that they cared about. They did keep their lifestyle modest as well. They paid off some debts and quietly supported their community then. So the impact of their sudden wealth was mostly positive. Apply Wesley's rule here. Becoming wealthy is never the problem, provided your means of doing so harms neither you nor anyone else. If obtaining it does not damage your soul or hurt anyone else, then chances are neither will having it. However, he would also say that you really need a plan to use your newfound wealth for good purposes, to help others. By giving all you can to help others, you will also accomplish God's plan. How many of you know who Chuck Feeney is? Probably very few. This is actually my favorite rags to riches story. He became a billionaire by creating a global retail empire through airport duty-free stores. His business exploded in the 1960s and 70s. What he quietly did then comes as a surprise to most people. He transferred almost all his wealth into a foundation called Atlantic Philanthropies. He lived in a modest rented apartment, flew economy class, and avoided publicity. In all, he kept about $2 million to provide for himself and his family. That sounds like quite a lot, but it dwarfs in comparison with the $8 billion that he channeled into this foundation, supporting education, public health, peace efforts, and human rights around the world. His identity as the donor was kept hidden for years, until a 1997 Forbes article revealed his secret. Today, Feeney's story is often cited as the gold standard of wealth used for others, because he didn't just give generously, he restructured his entire life around the idea of generosity. In his case, sudden wealth turned into extravagant generosity. He didn't give away just a tenth of his wealth. He gave away far more than he kept. Jesus didn't say, "Blessed are the tithers, for they shall be called the children of God." What Jesus did say is, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." And he also told us, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And he added this as well: no one can serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and money. However, whether you are actually rich or poor, if you are wise, then you will use whatever resources you do have to serve God by helping others. And in that way, you will ensure that your treasure is safe and that it is right where it should be. Be safe, and God bless you.